Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the Called2B Podcast, where we seek to empower everyday believers to discover and live out their authentic calling in Christ. I'm Reverend Dr. Travis Guzzi. I'm a pastor as well as an ICF-certified life and executive coach and a Gallup Strengths coach. And we want to welcome all of you for our special once-a-month edition of Everyday Believers, where we seek to have conversations with everyday believers doing extraordinary things in the kingdom. And today we have a special guest. I've actually been looking forward to this podcast for a long time. I want to welcome Noah Harmon into the Called2B studios. And what we're going to be talking about today is, Noah, your calling and vocation as a plumber and how God uses you on an everyday basis to bless others, and especially diving into being younger, the decision you made not to go to college and choosing this career route. So it's good having you here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I hope that our listening and viewing audience are blessed as well.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Noah, let's start by getting to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background, your faith journey, maybe a few things, hobbies, and likes you have.
Yeah, I'm Noah Harmon. I'm just a young 20-year-old guy who's, living out the life as well as I can, in these times.
Right.
I was born in New York, but I like to say I was raised here because we moved here when I was just in first grade. So
a lot of your childhood has been here.
Right. I like to say I'm a New Yorker, but then, some people will get a little picky, like, you only lived there for a little bit of your life. But yeah, I've always loved doing a whole bunch of array of things. I love working with my hands, and I really love, not sitting down. So it's fun for me to kind of do stuff and, live my life as active as I can.
Yeah, and you have a lot of very active hobbies. I mean, I know you do hunting, fishing, boating, things like that.
Oh yeah, yes sir. I love to do anything that keeps me moving. So, and my hobbies change a lot. Anybody, even my parents, would say that I can never stick with only one hobby. It's always jumping between, whether it's hockey or it's fishing. I'm always, one week I could be, on the boat, and the next week I'm in the ice rink. So, it varies a lot.
Yeah. Wonderful. And besides that life and faith journey, you also have a unique calling, which I know my son does as well, Kendall, being a PK, a pastor's kid.
Oh, yes.
Talk a little bit about that journey, because it's, I don't think a lot of people realize, there's some joys of it, but there also can be some pressures with it as well. What was that like for you?
Well, always whenever you're a pastor's kid, especially in Sunday school, people look at you different because they think every little thing about the Bible and, what's happening. And especially at the church, when you're a pastor's kid, you get a lot of, hey, do you know what's happening, this time? No,
like your dad sits down and goes through the schedule
right.
and the, strategic operations.
It's like I'm one of the staff members or something. But no, it's always fun because you get to meet a lot of people. And a lot of people are, always looking out for you, always making sure you're doing all right. And then, it's always fun to meet new people. I've always been, hey, there's a new kid who's your age, just came to church. Why don't you go, just introduce yourself,
right? Bring
him to Sunday school, see what's happening, show him around.
Yeah.
So that's really a joy because you get to learn those skills of, public speaking or talking to new people without knowing them.
Right.
But then, you always have the flip side, which is, you're always the one looked at like, hey, there's a new guy, you should go over there and talk to him. So
the expectations, too, that go with that. Yeah.
Right. And there's always, certain things that happen inside of the church that maybe people will look at you like, oh, well, you must know more, you must know a whole lot more about this one thing. And, it's just a challenge because you have to. That's kind of something that brings on to you. Like, I don't, but I have to, I can't just say, no, like start screaming at him. I got to, calmly. Like,
And even if you did, it's probably not the best place to put you because you're not the called staff person. You're a kid whose dad happens to be the pastor.
Right. At the end of the day, I'm, my vote is just as important as the other person's vote at the church.
That's right. That's right. Now, you also do, you're a drummer, and so you do some drumming in the worship band. When did you pick up drumming?
I kind of just fell in love with it when we moved here. At that time, we had a service it was a family-oriented service in between two different services, and they were looking for a drummer, and I was like, yeah, let's try it out, and kind of fell in love with it, and been doing that for gosh, I don't even know how long. It's been quite the amount of years doing that, but I've always loved it because I can always tell, feeling the beat in the music, that I always knew I was either going to be a bass player or a drummer. So when the opportunity to become a drummer came up, I was like, yes, give me those sticks. I want to play the drums.
Yeah,
so.
That's awesome. And even though your dad's not the pastor anymore, actually, he's my boss, Reverend Dr. Bill Harmon, president of the Southeastern District. But yet you're still continuing serving in the church and leading worship as a drummer.
Yeah, I do the drums, and I just started to become a service coordinator at our church. So I kind of help run Sundays and, look over anybody who ushers, kind of let the Sunday go smooth without making the staff who are worshiping, or who are running worship, kind of have all those questions. People will come to me and kind of I can help mitigate their level of stress during that Sunday.
So they can focus on what they need to for Sunday worship leading and preaching, and you're kind of working behind the scenes, making sure everything else is running properly.
Right. Correct.
That's awesome. Great. Well, great service within the church, part of your calling as a believer. So what I really wanted to dive in with you today, because I've been very fascinated. So you're just a little younger than my son's age. And the thing that I noticed, as every kid kind of graduates from high school, and now it's kind of like, what do I do next? Considering, and oftentimes many people say there's maybe an expectation, or they think that college is the option for moving forward, finding that career, and establishing yourself in life. You took a different route. You decided intentionally not to go to college and decided to go into the trades and become a plumber. I'd love to hear, and maybe just share with our listening and viewing audience, what was your thought process? What led you to that decision as opposed to the typical college route?
Yeah, I had the opportunity in high school to go to a trade school for half of the day. And, I knew that there was a point in my life where I was like, I'll probably go to college. I was thinking about certain routes I would take, what I would study. But it was kind of the end of high school career that I was, noticing that didn't seem fun anymore, right? I would love it for the aspect of the people, but when it came to like actually sitting down and like, going through school, I would have not liked it. So when that opportunity came up for the trade school, I was like, okay, yeah, let's try this out. Maybe I won't like it and I will go back and decide.
So it was always an option. It just, let's explore maybe a different route first.
Right. Because I knew I always liked to work with my hands, and always, like, my parents have always told me the story about when I was young. There were 2 times, one, a vacuum cleaner was broken and they were going to throw it away. And I was like, no, I want to try to dissect it and, learn what's happening. And I did. And then, my little, Tonka truck that you have as a little kid broke. So I was over there trying to fix it. So I knew I've always been like let me try to figure this out and fix this. So, I went to New Horizons, is what it's called, the trade school. And plumbing was, the first option I looked at. And it was their new class. And I was like, yeah, let's give it a try. My grandfather on my mom's side, my grandfather on my mom's side might not be, so excited because he was an electrician. But, you have to give and take.
So is there competition in some of the trades? Kind of like the military, which branch you're in?
Right. Oh, yeah, there always is. We all joke around with each other. But at the end of the day, you always got to, push some buttons on the other trades. But, yeah, that was the option that I chose first, and I got accepted into that program, and I was like, hey, let's try this out. It's the new class for them, and it's something new for me, and I fell in love with it. And that's when they started talking about, hey, look, you're a senior, and if you don't want to go to college, we have this opportunity to where we bring in all these companies and you can interview with them and you can get hired through New Horizons straight into the workforce. And I thought, bingo, let's do that. That's a great idea. At that point, I was kind of solidified, like, I'm going to go into a trade. I'm not going to go to college. And, my parents were very, very, very supportive with me. And, they want me to do what I want to do and be the best I can be. So when I went through that program, you go through the whole process. It's not just like, I want to do it. And the company's like, yeah, I'll choose you. You still go through that, you learn about, okay, let me put in a resume. You learn the resume whole building process. You learn about the interview process. You go through the interviews, and it's a real interview. It's not, just a mock interview. So I went through all that, and the company that I'm at hired me and one of my buddies in the same year through that company.
Nice.
So, I was very excited.
Yeah. That's great that your parents were supportive of that, because I know that, and I probably have to admit, I'm probably a little guilty of this. You've got to go to college. In college, for many parents, that's the way to success. That's the way to achieve in life and have a future. That your parents were okay and supportive of you. Was there any conversation? What did that look like when you came home and said, hey, I don't think I'm going to college. I'm doing this route?
Yeah, it was, like I said, they were, supportive of it. They knew, your parents always like, I've always known that you work with your hands a lot. And they knew that. So when they saw this opportunity come up for me, they were excited because, they kind of figured that if I went to college, it would still be, a little bit of a struggle for me, just because school wasn't my best, topic, my best thing. So when this opportunity came up, they were like, yeah, this is perfect for you. This is, it's totally fine, because at the end of the day, they're not going to force me to do something that I wouldn't want to do, which is it's amazing, because, they knew that, okay, yeah. That's fits you more. You know?
Yeah.
So
and I think what there's kind of this idea. It's interesting is there's this idea of intelligence. And so much we think of intelligence as just book smarts and academics.
Right.
When there's other kinds of intelligence, there's emotional intelligence, the interaction with people, which you've obviously been honing some of your skills through church, and obviously seem to have helped you in your interview process and probably today working with people, loving and serving. There's also kind of the ability to work with your hands and being active, problem solving. And I think that there's got to be a wider understanding of kind of what intelligence is, and realizing that different people have different kinds of intelligence.
Right. Yeah. It is a very specific, like you were saying, many people think that there's like book smart and that's it. You have to be book smart to be smart. But the amount of people that I've met who kind of took my path, older than me, who just went straight into the trades, the amount of knowledge that you learn, like you were saying about, okay, I can look at your house and say, all right, so your sewer line's over here, but there's a bathroom on this side of the house. And you can kind of visualize that. And, there's so many different knickknacks that you have to go through, that you have to figure out. It's a lot of problem solving, which is what I've noticed. Is it's a lot of, the person saying, hey, none of my house is, draining correctly. And you have to go through the steps of like, okay, is it only one place? Is it many places? So there's a lot of problem solving, and there is definitely a lot of, learning your self-control of, some people aren't very excited to, particularly pay for a plumber to be at their house.
Right.
So some of them might have a different attitude or a different, stand on why you're there. So you have to control yourself no matter what happened with the jobs before. If that person was, kind of push your buttons a little bit, you kind of have to reset and be like, okay, look, this person doesn't know what happened, the past 3 hours that I've been stuck at this other job. So let me go in there as like, you're my first job, my day's going great, right? So there's definitely certain times where you kind of look at someone, you're like, all right, they're not having the best day. Let me, maybe it's not time to, joke around a little bit with them, or, you have to learn.
So you're being adaptive in your interaction with people.
Right. And, I have learned from you that my number one trait is woo. So
Clifton strengths.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have adapted that with one of my other coworkers who isn't particularly much of a people person, that, sometimes I'll read him and read the person and be like, okay, I'll take care of this. You just kind of step back. I can only see this escalating from here. So let me use myself to kind of settle everything down. Or if some people don't really want to talk, trying to, hey, look, we kind of need this information to,
Right.
get this done. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? No, I will say praise God for plumbers. Even though I have a master's degree, Master of Divinity as a pastor, I know a lot about the Bible. I went and got a doctorate in coaching. My wife will not let me touch plumbing. I flooded a house once, changing a faucet sink, in the kitchen, and we left. I didn't realize you had to turn the water off.
Right.
It burst, flooded the house for 3 days before anybody noticed. So anyway, let's just say praise God for plumbers, because I may have a lot of academic smarts, especially in theology and coaching. When it comes to plumbing, electricity, things like that, I'm terrible. I just don't have that knowledge and that skill set.
Right.
Real quick, I was curious, what did your friends think? So you decide not to go to college. A lot of them, I know many probably went to JMU, other schools, University of Virginia, Virginia Tech. What was their reaction?
They were mixed. There's always those few that are like, why aren't you coming with the rest of the flock, right? Why aren't you flying with us? Why are you turning around? That kind of thing. And then you get some who also went with my path and that are awesome. And there are some that, are in the middle. They went to college, but they're like, look, that's a smart idea,
Yeah.
And many of them, will reach out to me, hey, how's it going? You sure? Especially the first year, after that first semester, everyone's like, you sure that's what you want to do? And, I was just loving it, and I am loving it so much that I was like, yeah. But they were all, supportive and, very welcoming, because, it's always good to have a friend who knows how to do, plumbing, So everybody, at the end of the day, we joke around about it and say, we can all benefit from each other. So,
Right.
Yeah, they're all very supportive.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's some studies that, kind of shown that, listen, if you go to college, your opportunity for earning a high, possibly a higher income. And yet, though, sometimes college isn't quite delivering on the promises that they seem to be making. There's a lot of people who come out of college with huge debt and jobs that they didn't necessarily study for, not making the income that they had thought or hoped for. Just out of curiosity, just in case we had some young people who are like, do I go to college? Is there another route for me? Without revealing how much you're getting paid, generally, somebody who goes into some of the trades, electrician, or maybe what you're doing as a plumber, what could they be expecting to be making once you kind of finish training, and what might be some career kind of expectations for salary?
Yeah, so there's always opportunities, when you're at my age to, always be getting paid more if you need to. But, you make enough to where when you're at my age, you can do some things that maybe your other friends might not be able to do, go places. But, I always say, even if you do go to college, maybe you find out, that's not right. Like you were saying, maybe I'm not getting all this opportunity that I thought I was. And if you want to go into a trade, it's never too late to go into a trade.
Right.
Because, you'll always have something that you can use for the rest of your life. And, as a young guy walking into someone's house, I hear that a lot, which is you always have a job, and, you can always go somewhere if something doesn't, work out right.
Right.
But I think that, even if you do go to college, that might work out for you. And like you were saying, you might come out with, some money in debt. And even if you do come out in debt and you realize, I don't know, there's always a second path that you can go on.
Yeah. As well for you. I mean, if someday down the line, maybe 10, 20 years, you decide, I'd like to try something different. There's always opportunity to go back to college or maybe another trade. And I think that's the wonderful thing in our world is many times people get paralyzed in decision-making thinking there's only one path. And if I mess it up, if I don't do this, I'm going to mess up the rest of my life. Right. And I think that the realization is there's a lot of paths that can still be good for you, that God can bless. And listen, if it doesn't work out, you do it for a while, there's always other options.
Right. And you can always, I'm currently working on getting my journeyman, which is basically a step down from your master's. So it's right now I'm an apprentice, right? So I am in school technically, but I'm working through the day to go, I'm learning a lot hands-on, and then, you have to have some book time.
Yeah.
But, it's not just, I'm a plumber, right? You have steps to being a plumber, right? So you're a helper, you're kind of just putting where you need them, right? You're kind of jumping around, okay, you need help today with this. Okay, and then, oh, wait, you need help with that, right? And then you kind of get into the apprentice, which is where I am, and that's, they trust you to do things. They can send you out to do things. They know, and you're in school to learn all this stuff, right? And so once you get your journeyman, which is a step above apprentice, then you have that magical card, that card that everyone's like, okay, you've made it, but there's one more step.
Right.
So you can, there are steps to, you're still learning, and there's steps to that the title as, master plumber. It's not as easy as, oh, I have 30 years of experience. Now I'm a master plumber, right?
Right.
But there's always that opportunity to learn and to grow in what you're doing, which is also, I didn't realize when I was getting into it.
Right.
Until, because you just hear, oh, I'm a master plumber, but you don't hear, sometimes the steps in between.
Right. So not just that apprentice, but the learning and the training that goes into that.
Right. You don't realize that, oh, I do have to read a book, for this. I thought it was just all, just hands-on. But, yeah, there's definitely steps that I didn't know were there that are there for that growth.
Yeah. So, Noah, as you're getting into this, how long have you been doing this for now?
It'll be 3 years in July. So
okay.
Like 2.5 years.
Wow. Time flies. It's amazing. So as you do it, what are some of the joys, but also some of the challenges that you've been experiencing?
Joys, for sure, are places that I go. Like, there are so many industrial plants here in Virginia locally that I had no idea were there. And to be able to go in as my job and see, how Coca-Cola cans are made, or, how frozen foods are packed, all that is, eye-opening for me as, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was in Virginia. I thought this was all, in the Midwest, or, but also people, you meet so many people when you're in my job. Every day is a new day. So just the amount of people that are around in the Hampton Roads area is wonderful to me to meet. And just hearing their stories sometimes, you're there for work, but, sometimes I like to talk to them like, hey, how'd you get this house? This is a cool little rancher, and the amount of stories that you'll meet and backgrounds that we hear from people are just amazing.
Yeah. So for you, it sounds like it's not just the problem solving and fixing things, but it's also the interaction with people that really you find a lot of joy in.
Oh yeah, I love that, and just the animals. You don't realize when you're at work, how much you might miss your dog at home. But I'm always the first if the technician that I'm with is terrified of dogs, which I've been with a couple people, they'll always send me in there first, because it's like a challenge for me when people say, I don't know if my dog will come up, he's a little shy. I immediately am like, I'm going to get that dog to come over to me and I'm going to pet it.
I'm going to woo that dog.
Yeah, exactly. And I do. Every time people are like, I'm surprised you're able to do that. So it's awesome opportunity to meet people and everything. It's awesome.
How about the challenges and any maybe some real challenging jobs you've even had,
Yeah. Challenging jobs are sometimes very stinky, to say the least.
Could imagine.
Yeah. So it's very much of, it could just take a long time. Sometimes you're on a job that, you think, oh, this is going to be a quick 30-minute job, but you're there for such a long period of time. So kind of keeping your cool and like, okay, let me not get overwhelmed with, this sewer is not dropping, not getting cleared out like I want it to. Let me take a step back, take a breather. Just stressful situations is a lot of, the challenges that I feel are in that, in that trade, in any trade. But I think also challenges are, places that you'll be, because, there are some places in like not only in town, certain areas that are kind of, not the best, higher crime rates, you kind of got to be on a lookout.
Yeah.
But also, you're in tight spaces a lot, moving.
Crawl spaces under houses.
Right.
And, yeah.
So there's so many different challenges that can, that happen with the job that, some are, mentally, some are physically, some are just like, okay, where am I?
Right.
Sometimes you got to look at your coworker and say, just keep an eye on each other, kind of look around. So,
yeah, it seems like it's a lot of navigating ambiguity, complexity, the challenges, how long is it going to take, and to be able to also kind of remain kind of cool and have that kind of non-anxious presence for the sake of the client that you're serving too.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't look good when your plumber's kind of concerned in front of you,
Right.
As I've heard some people like, as a customer, when you guys kind of look around with a, anxious or concerned face on your look on your face, it doesn't look good to me. Like it kind of, so yeah, you got to learn to kind of keep that all in while you're there. If you go out to the van, you might be like, okay, you can get that stressed look on your face.
Right.
Many times.
I kind of heard it like the swan approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's you have to appear like you're gliding along the water effortlessly, not seeing all the legs, just frantically underneath.
That is a perfect example of what it is. Because inside you are going crazy, like what is happening here? But on the outside, you're like, yeah, everything's going all right. We'll be done just here shortly.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah,
that's great. Hey, Noah, so part of this podcast, we're really looking at how can, Luther taught about vocation, which really is all about in the horizontal plane of life, loving and serving our neighbor. In a practical way, how do you see yourself living out your faith to love and serve neighbor in practical ways in your role as a plumber?
Yeah, there have been many coworkers that I've had who, I don't walk around and go, hey, I'm a pastor's kid, hey, that's just not me. Once I get to know the person, there have been a few coworkers who, we've had a talk of like, I've had a hard time in life, what's happening here. And, I feel like that's God calling me like, hey, this is your opportunity to help this guy out,
Right.
I brought some coworkers to church before and they're like, wow, this is what I needed,
Yeah.
I needed to see this and to go to church to kind of, feel relief in this stressful time. So it's always nice to be able to use God to call me to be like, hey, you need to help these people out. You might not know it yet, but you need to go talk to this person. He might look a little stressed, but, talk him through and say, hey, what's going on?
Right.
Kind of help people and, bring them closer to Christ.
Yeah. Just be in the presence of Jesus, the hands and the feet and the voice to love and serve coworker. And trust me, as somebody who has relied on plumbers, I know that part of that kind of God's economy of exchange and vocation is, plumbers, electricians, other trades, they love and serve me with their technical know-how that I just don't have and should not be touching in any way, shape, or form. And then, for the customer, we love and serve you by giving you a paycheck and helping you be able to support yourself in life and maybe someday a family. And so it's kind of this world that God has created. It's all about love and service, and there's different ways we do that.
Yeah, there have been many, customers who it kind of surprises me because, like I was saying, as a person, I'm not one to be like, hey, you need to come, right? I'll kind of read people first and kind of learn like, hey, I think you need to, let's have a chat, when nobody else is here, you and me. But some customers will just, which I love, it's awesome, but they'll come and be like, hey, you guys should come to my church this Sunday. And I'm like, wow, I didn't expect that.
Right.
During the workday, you don't expect somebody to, hey, I want you to come to my church. It's just rare. So when you see that, it's like, wow, yeah. They want us to connect, and when I say, hey, yeah, I go to church, where do you go? Right. You get that conversation and you realize, hey, we're kind of, we're kind of bonding in a way that, some people might not realize, which is, you know him, I know him, we both love him. Let's invite more people to come learn about him, which is what I love.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Great to hear how you live out your faith with coworkers, with customers, through your calling. Noah, as we kind of get ready to land this plane here for this podcast conversation, for our listening, viewing audience, and my hope and prayer is especially maybe some high schoolers, they're thinking about their future. A lot of apprehension, I think. I don't think a lot of people realize sometimes the anxiety that can create of what should I do? Should I go to college or not? Mm-hmm. If somebody is wrestling with that, is college for me or not? Should I consider the trades? What advice would you give them in that deliberation process?
If you have the opportunity to try it, try it. If there's, just for the summer, working at even, just a maintenance crew, try it and see if you like it. Sometimes, you might, okay, I'm going to go do college, and then you'll switch. So there's always that opportunity to kind of switch. But I would always try it if you can, and if you want to work with your hands, or you're thinking, I think I might want to work with my hands or dig a trench, which nobody says, but we think that if you have the opportunity, go for it. Don't see that opportunity pass by as, oh, I could have done that. Try it if you have the opportunity, because you can always say no. You can always change.
Yeah. And I think it's just realizing, listen, give it a shot. Mm-hmm. Realize you got more options, and if it doesn't work, there's other options available.
There's always options.
Yeah, and you're not like blowing your life just because you went down a path. And,
right.
God has a way. Thinking about our car's GPS, mm-hmm. that sometimes we might make a wrong turn. And I do that every once in a while. And the wonderful thing is the GPS will go recalculating.
Right.
And now help you from where you are get to where you're supposed to be going. Mm-hmm. And I think God has a way of doing that with us. He recalculates us all the time. Oh, yeah. We think we're heading a direction and it might work out, and perhaps it's not. And, there's always an opportunity with God to recalculate every single day.
Yeah, there's always an opportunity to recalculate.
That's right. Well, Noah, thank you for being here. Wonderful podcast conversation. And we want to also thank our listening and viewing audience for joining us. We hope and pray that this podcast conversation was a blessing to you. We would like to encourage you, if you've been blessed by this conversation, make sure that you hit that like button for our YouTube subscribers and those viewing on YouTube. Helps us build an audience also with our audio version of this podcast. Also, too, if you know somebody who is maybe a young person wrestling, do I go to college? What, maybe consider the trades? What do I do with my future? Share this podcast with them. And hopefully and prayerfully, it'll be a blessing to them as they kind of work through that decision-making process as well. Maybe you're a person considering, what am I going to do with my future? And you just would like somebody to walk along with you. Reach out and let's talk about coaching. You can reach out to us at Called2B Podcast at gmail.com. That's Called2B Podcast at gmail.com. As always, we want to thank our sponsors, Malem and the Southeastern District, for their generous gift that makes this podcast possible. And with that, we want to wish you all God's richest blessings, and we'll catch you next time for the Called2B Podcast. Take care, everybody.